Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a Yuletide Charles Coulombe.
Yuletide indeed, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do what's called in the business a panning shot. Christmas tree. See the poinsettia? Takes me back to California. Lights. And let's not forget the creche. So, I am in full Christmas mode. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sin is reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise. Join the triumph of the skies, with angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
Yes. That was lovely, Charles.
Christmassy?
I'm very Christmassy. I'm enjoying this Christmas, Charles. Yes. Yeah.
Are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Are you rocking around the Christmas tree?
Yes. You like that song, don't you? Rocking around the Christmas
tree. Have a happy holiday. Yeah. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock.
Yeah, that's the spirit.
What kind we don't know. It's the spirit, ladies and gentlemen, of Christmas, Westchester County, 1963. My first champagne.
What?
No, it was actually New Year's, but anyway. Yes, my first champagne.
1963?
Yeah.
You're 3 years old? What?
I was.
You had your first champagne at the age 3.
I sure did. I remember it well. And that's why whenever I heard many years later the Frankie Valli song, oh, what a night, late December back in 63, what a very special time for me, as I remember what a night. Yeah.
Stunning.
Well, late December back in 63.
All right. How's your Christmas, Charles?
Busy. I did a lot of stuff because, as you know, I didn't know what I'd be doing for this Christmas. I really had absolutely no idea how I would end up, where we would go with it, what we would do with it. I did not know at all. But, and this is a big but, we had a lot of things, both here at Trumau, on Christmas Eve day. We had the Christmas Eve day. We had the what do you call it? The what's the word I'm looking for?
Potluck.
The Byzantine. Oh. What's that? Well, that came later. We had the Byzantine liturgy. And the royal hours and all that. First time I'd ever done the royal hours, and I was interested in doing them, so that was good. And then let me see. Then what happened? We had a Slovak meatless Christmas supper. So a few of us with our chaplain and his family, because they're Eastern Rite from Slovakia, and I had the oplatkis, which of course I've heard about from your family for years. I finally had one of my own, and everyone at the table said, "Why do you look around furtively?" And I said, "I know this is Franchini, so you're gonna snag it, you're gonna take it from me." So I ate it kind of quickly so you wouldn't have the chance, and that was fun. Then came back here. My classmates helped me decorate the tree and the thing. at midnight, we read the birth of our Lord, the traditional version from the martyrology, and then enthroned the baby Jesus in the creche. And then they left around 12:30 a.m. And I started talking to friends and relatives in the States, and I stayed up doing that until 4. Then I got up in the morning. There's another Byzantine liturgy at 11, and then there was the what do you call it? The brunch, which was a potluck and very, very pleasant. I went to Vienna for Tridentine Mass of Christmas for 5 in the afternoon. Saw a bunch of friends, wished them all happy Christmas. Came back here, and we had a very, very nice, not to say lavish, Christmas dinner potluck. We had duck, turkey, chicken, champagne, eggnog. We had all sorts of goodies. And there was singing, and it was really, really quite nice.
What about Santa Claus?
Well, St. Nicholas came on St. Nicholas's Eve, December 5th. Santa didn't get here this year.
No gifts.
No gifts. Well, no, did I get any gifts? Yeah, I got a few bottles of different things from classmates. So that was about it. Nobody sent me anything. I got a few cards, but no one sent gifts from the States. It's all right, everyone. I realize I'm forgotten in a foreign land. But nevertheless, it has been a wonderful Christmas thus far. And I say thus far for an important reason.
Yeah.
Christmas goes on until January the 6th, the Epiphany. And in a somewhat lighter mode until Candlemas. So this
I thought you
year,
said till Mardi Gras.
Well, Candlemas, Mardi Gras, it would occur around the same time. I always call Mardi Gras Christmas's last gasp.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to Candlemas, you're definitely in Mardi Gras season. You're in the middle of Carnival. But people, they call it pre-Lent or the season of Septuagesima or whatever. But there's definitely an end to the Christmas festivities at that time. And of course, in a lot of places, the Epiphany is seen as the beginning of Carnival season, which lasts until Mardi Gras night itself, which is another reason I call it the last gasp of Christmas. But especially now, we need to hold on to Christmas as long as we can, ladies and gentlemen. Especially the memories of Christmases past. And so, I'm going to send you something. I'm going to send you something that you can share with our audience in place of memes of production.
Okay.
An image that reminds me very much of my Aunt Jenny's house back in 1963, 64, or one night, late December back in 63. This reminds me of what adult Christmas parties were like back then. In that place, anyway.
Okay.
It just sums it up for me. How does that look?
Oh, yeah, I saw that picture on your feed. It looks like Don Draper.
Well, that's what things looked like in that era. It's actually, I don't know, to tell you the truth, I don't know if it's a photo or an illustration. It could be either one. I don't know.
It's definitely an illustration.
That's what I remember Christmas parties being like when I was a boy.
There you go. It's up on the screen now for everyone to see.
As I say, that could have been my aunt's house on Tall Timber Road in Chappaqua, New York, in 1963. I showed it to my cousin Jamie, and his response was, he's 5 years older than I am, and his response was, yeah, I remember those parties. Everybody got crocked. I'm sure he meant it, however, in a much more poetic way than I've just stated it.
Surely.
What? They were the greatest generation. Do you think they just went out and got crocked?
Yeah, but they did it with style.
No, more style than we have anyway.
All right. Anything else? Is that it? Is that mostly it?
Oh, I don't know. Well, we discussed before the show the possibility of the president celebrating the Epiphany with a some sort of electoral maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of interesting.
That is going to be very interesting. I think I don't know. Some people are very fanatical about this. I don't know if they're. I'm tempted to wonder if they're in denial about things, or if they. But they could be right. I hope they're right. I hope they're right.
That's the thing exactly. And the president's speech about the president's speech about why he turned down the latest relief bill, because it was filled with all this pork that was not related to relief. He gives a long, detailed speech about that. But then at the end, he says, of course, if we don't get a relief bill, it'll be left to the next administration to deal with it. And that might be me. And I thought, is he being funny? Is he being cute? But if they really are going to try to do this, maybe he wasn't being funny or cute. Maybe he meant it. I mean, that would be the icing on the cake of a most bizarre and peculiar year. Can you imagine the utter outrage and uproar and jumping up and down and gnashing of teeth?
I have to believe several cities will be lit on fire,
including yours. Gavin Newsom might blow his own brains out or be helped. Kamala Harris might get a job. There's no knowing what lengths people won't go to. You could imagine Kamala Harris with a job, couldn't you?
Yeah, I'm a pretty imaginative person.
Yeah, let's not find out what that job would be, though. We can leave that alone.
Yeah.
But no, I'm part of me kind of wishes he would, pull that stunt. I mean, I don't know if he would succeed with it, because a lot would depend on the Republican delegations in the House one thing for those of our listeners that don't know, the Senate and the House would have to vote on it, but the Senate at the moment is a majority Republican. The House, however, although it's majority Democrat, 30 of the delegations are Republican, and it's on that basis they would vote. 30 delegations to 20.
Yeah, what's that number based on? That's strange to me.
Well, no, it's just, remember the myth of the United States is that we have 50 sovereign states. So each delegation in Congress is made up of whoever the congressmen from that state are. So if you've got a state with 20 congressmen in it, they've got a delegation of 20. If you've got a state with one congressman, like New Mexico used to be, they've got a delegation of one, but those are two delegations. If you see what I mean.
I see.
So the one state with 20 delegations is 17 of them are Democrats, and the one congressman in the other state is a Republican, then the one delegation is Democrat, the other delegation is Republican. Because whether the delegation is Republican or Democratic depends upon the majority of the congressmen in that delegation.
I see.
So in other words, they have more congressmen overall, but the Republicans have more delegations.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So it also, by the way, speaks to the political and geographical imbalance in the country, just so you know. the fact that 30 delegations are Republican.
Yeah.
And only 20 are Democrat. But the Democrats have a majority.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll see.
But in that kind of a setup, what it would require is Vice President Pence and the Republicans in House and Senate sticking to it, despite the inevitable maelstrom that it will release. And the only way I can imagine they would do that is if they were absolutely sure a Biden-Harris presidency would be worse than the price they'll pay.
I think we'll know in the upcoming week or so if it's going to happen based on the actual threats.
Oh, that's true.
You know what I mean? Because we're just wishful thinking. If it's actually a legitimate threat to the Democrats, then they're going to say, the cities are going to burn if you do this, right?
Yeah.
So, I
think
it'll be,
If they say that, if they start threatening, there'll be counter threats.
Yeah. So we'll get wind of it, I think, if it does, in fact, if it's on the table.
Yeah, that's a fair. Well, you called it as far as going into the courts in the first place, so I'm wanting to give you this one.
Okay, thank you.
Despite how you feel about, the cute little things.
Right. Well, that's a matter of taste. Good taste.
You say they're tasty.
Yeah, like veal cutlets.
How often do you eat guinea pig?
Man, I really they're in short supply over here. They're in short supply over here, so it's kind of a delicacy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
They never make their way to the commissary, do they?
No. Okay. On to the questions.
Okay, what do we got?
First one is from Yusef.
All right.
We Christianized Halloween and Christmas. Do you think we should do the same for non-Christian holidays among newly Christian groups, like the Chinese Lunar Festival and Holi in India? Or should we wait till the old religion completely dies?
That's a very good question, and I really don't, like any good question of that sort, I doubt there's a one-size-fits-all answer. I think that if it's going to happen, it'll happen naturally over time. Because remember, nobody sat around saying that this is how we're going to do it with the other holidays. It just happened over time. The Lunar Festival, incidentally, is one that I happen to be very fond of. Because, as you know, in the San Gabriel Valley, it's a big deal. And we have mooncakes.
Well, he's not asking will it happen. He's asking should it happen.
I think if it does happen the way it did with the others, it should happen.
Okay.
I mean, you got to bear in mind that a lot of this stuff happens under the influence of the Holy Ghost. And it's a slow, gradual development. And nobody sits around and mandates it.
Right. Question from Gunter. I was wondering if Charles has ever heard of the Christmas peace of 1914. If he has, would he elaborate on it? I've read that the leadership on all sides looked negatively on this Christmas fraternization. It sadly calls to mind the attitude of unconditional surrender that was adopted throughout history. It's sad when the masters chose to show no mercy for their brothers.
Well, that's very true. But what the Christmas truce of 1914 was just what it sounds like. In various parts of the Western Front, they were already dug in. The trenches had begun. And on Christmas Eve, the British and the French and the German soldiers started hearing each other singing their own versions of Silent Night. And this lured them out of the trenches, and they exchanged gifts and played at sports through Christmas Day against each other, and hung out. And then on the 26th, went back to the business of butchering each other. And yeah, this was regarded with a great deal of disfavor by the upper echelon on all sides. I think it speaks to something very decent in mankind, certainly in Christian mankind, and to something really wonderful about Christmas itself. But at that particular juncture in history, hate was stronger than love.
What juncture of history involves love being stronger than hate?
Oh, not usually in the great scheme of things, but very often in the immediate. The fellow who's about to kill another fellow in war, in combat, and the fellow says things like, "Before you kill me, will you send my rosary to my mother?" And the fellow who's about to kill him looks at him and just forget it.
Okay. Question from Michael. Greetings, Charles and Vincent. I have a rather sobering moral question for both of you. Is it morally acceptable to use vaccines that have been developed using aborted human cells? My doctor prescribed that I get a routine meningitis vaccine. I do not know at this point whether the vaccine was developed using aborted cells, but if so, should I get it anyway, or should I refuse to get it? Should I try to find another vaccine that does not use abortion? I understand that the Church allows the use of such vaccines under certain conditions, namely that they are the only ones available and that they not be used with the intention of supporting abortion. Do you agree with this? I'd appreciate any advice Charles or Vincent could offer.
I'll give that to Vincent.
Why?
I don't want it.
I don't want it either, Charles.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for your help and support. All right.
This is one of those where people are so passionate on both sides, and I think both you and I are like, leave us out of it, please.
There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, it certainly is a question we shouldn't have to face. The fact that fetal cells are used at all is an evil.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And one is always, it's a little bit like the communion in the hand with the bishops. You almost feel as though they're doing this to get you tarred into it. Once you're tarred, you're part of the deal. Whether or not that's conscious on their part, I don't know. I do know that I don't like the idea, honestly. The other problem, too, that I have with the vaccines, I'm old enough to remember the swine flu excitement of 76. Mind you, I remember the Hong Kong flu of 68, but we didn't have vaccines back then. So you know how we fought the Hong Kong flu?
How?
Washed our hands. It was deadly, and a number of people, especially the elderly, succumbed to it. But at the end of the day, there wasn't much we could do about it except carry on, which is what we did. Then in 76, they had vaccinations at that point for this kind of thing, and they rushed it into production. And a lot of people got vaccinated, and they got what was called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which was a general weakening. A lot of people got quite sick because of the vaccine. So my brother's kind of surly comment about the new one is, I'll wait until it's playing in a local theater, and then I'll think about it. I see. It's very difficult for me to trust either the pro or anti COVID people. You know what I mean? There's so much confusion and contradictory stuff being said.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, that makes it even more difficult is that here in Europe, no two countries have precisely the same regulations. So we're allowed to do what the people next door can't, but the people further on, they can't do something we can. And you're like, so what's the point? Their curfew lasts an hour later than ours. And you get the very strange feeling that they're doing stuff just to be seen to be doing something. And I'm afraid that colors my view of the vaccine. And I may be wrong. I don't know. But I think part of the problem we have is that leadership today in church and state has no more credibility. We can't trust them. We can't trust anybody in charge of anything. I don't mean that's objectively true, of course, ladies and gentlemen. But subjectively speaking, it's very difficult to trust anything anyone in charge says about anything.
I have to admit, I'm a middle of the road guy, but listening to Fox News, and I forgot who they brought on there, some Surgeon General or whatever, talking about the vaccine, and it was pretty clear to me that his job was to sell the vaccine to the people, because they were talking about objections and talking about like weak side effects, and to me, I thought trivial matters, and they didn't answer the serious questions that were on my mind. They just dodged, like the fact that this is an mRNA vaccine, or it uses a new technology that has not been done before, and it's doing that in a rushed manner, and there's more serious questions, and none of those questions were even asked. That's alarm bells are going off there, whether the vaccine is safe or not. It's just they just don't value truth, right? It's like, it's pretty clear that the job is to sell the vaccine. Hopefully it works, but whether it does or not, it's not their concern. Their job is to sell it, I
mean, basically, we live under a regime that has the ethics of madmen without the style.
Yeah. That's very true.
And that, as far as the moral objections go, they're also very much in my mind. I'm not as doctrinaire about the two so-called remote lines, but what does that even mean? That they're remote? Well, that the use of the fetal tissue is remote. What does that even mean? And the other thing, too, is that the RNA is supposed to continually redesign your DNA. That sounds very strange to me. Especially something so radical and drastic over a disease that, at the end of the day, affects a small minority. I mean, the whole thing is so strange. I realize that some of our more woke, not woke, but more red-pilled and less giggling cuckish listeners will think that, oh, well, you're dancing all around it, and obviously it's some kind of a conspiracy. Well, it may be obvious to you. And if it is, good on you. It's not obvious to me. But the problem is, whether it's a conspiracy or just a rush job by people who are more interested in appearing to be doing something than really doing anything, or whatever you like, the end result is the same. It's a setup where I do not feel any trust in the people who are pushing it. And I don't have sufficient fear of the COVID to want the thing.
Yeah, so you're not going to get the vaccine? Or you're going to wait? But what are you
Uh,
waiting for? You know? I mean,
well, I'm waiting, firstly, to see if all the congressmen who take it die horrible deaths, screaming, rolling around on the floor because they were such cowards. They needed to save their worthless little lives, and so because the whole thing is a terrible deal and it's really screwy. So as a result, they're all going to die horribly on the floor of the Congress, shrieking their mother's names and then dying in pain.
I know, but assuming there's nothing overt, some tragedy happening, but maybe perhaps some. Let's say there's some questions on whether there's an effect, but it's not clear. What would you do?
Wait for it to get clear, and that waiting may end up in not having it.
Hmm.
I mean, one of the things that kind of haunts me is, again, from my knowledge of pandemics, this thing is going to go. It's going to leave. It's not going to become a permanent part of our lives. We all have the Spanish flu. Every one of us, right now, has the 1918 Spanish flu virus.
Yeah.
It's just non-lethal because viruses continually mutate, and usually, not always, usually they mutate into less lethal forms because the successful virus is one that doesn't kill its hosts. We are all crawling with viruses that would have killed us in their original form.
Natural immunity, right?
Yeah.
Who took? I saw a critique on Twitter that the World Health Organization took that off, and I think trads were complaining that it's for conspiratorial reasons, right?
I neither know nor care,
Yeah.
but I do know pandemics from. I'm not a medical man, but I am an historian, and they come and they go.
Yeah.
One of the things that they said to us before, I remember this very clearly back last winter, almost a year ago. Oh, this won't be affected by the weather. Don't expect a lessening of it during the summer. But and it's not affected by the weather. Wait a minute. It lessened considerably during the summer, and it's gotten worse during the winter. Almost as though it were affected by the weather. But see, the stories change so quickly, and they seem to forget what they told us earlier. Or perhaps they rely on people forgetting what they told us earlier. My great problem is that I can remember. And I have no doubt that by this time next year, at the most 2 years, this will have gone the way of the Spanish flu and the Hong Kong flu and everything else. Interestingly enough, I remember about 8 or 9 years ago, there was a flu that came out, and people were saying that folks older than a certain age didn't have to worry about it because they'd already had a flu that was very similar. And I mean, you had to be like 70 or something or more. But if you were that old, you'd already been exposed to something very similar to that particular flu, so you didn't have to worry about it, which is not usually the way these things work. Usually it's the older people who are the biggest threat. So I'm saying all this because they're getting us all excited. They're having us jump up and down. But what if in a year or 2 years, this pandemic is gone without a trace like all the others? What are we left with but a bunch of ruptured economies and damaged lives and assumed powers on questionable legal foundation? What are we going to be left with? And what will the reaction of the populace be to that?
You're against saving lives? You don't care about these people. You don't care whether they live or die.
You know what?
You believe in your make-believe heaven and that everything's going to be good, so you don't care about people dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
These papists.
In fact, the more the better, because they'll reduce the carbon imprint.
Oh, you flipped it.
Yep. See, the more that this kills, the more the environment will recover, the carbon imprint will go down, the terrible overpopulation issue will stop. Because after all, we know that human beings are mere animals to be governed by their masters and played with at will. So it doesn't matter how many of them. As long as our masters are safe and Governor Newsom still has his parties at the French Laundry and Kamala Harris has the client of her choice, everything is good.
Okay. I feel like I've done my job.
You wanted to trigger me.
I did, and it happened, and I feel good about myself.
And your choices?
Yes.
Good.
All right.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help people self-affirm. Remember that as the national mental hygiene czar and enabler, it's up to you to make the whole country feel good about itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I embrace that role, and everybody should take comfort in knowing that there's a mental hygiene czar looking over you, worried about you, caring about you.
I feel so much better right this second. I mean, it gives me chills up and down my spine. I feel so good. It's weird. You see how it is, ladies and gentlemen? You're gonna on January 6th. Let's say worst case scenario, right? We've got this build up to the 6th, and the Democrats are saying, it's going to be burn, baby, burn. And the Republicans will say, you know what? You try that crap. We're going to open fire, morons. There'll be blood in the streets. It'll be yours. And it's getting increasingly worrisome and hostile, right? But our listeners, being smarter than most, will say, it's all right. Vinny's worried about me. And this will become an actual phenomenon across the country. So, diverse people from Alaska to Florida, their co-workers, their family members, and all will say, "Well, Bob, aren't you? What's going on? What do you?" It's all right. What do you mean it's all right? They threatened to blow City Hall sky high. Yes, they very well may. Well, how can you say it's all right? Because Vinny's worried about me.
Yes.
Wow. There'll be outbreaks across the country of sheer acceptance and tranquility. And these will be considered subversive.
Subversive outbreaks of tranquility.
That's right. They'll be rounding these people up. They'll all be sort of blissed out, Okay, All right, that's enough of that. Get in the paddy wagon. Sure, officer, whatever you say. Just move along. Of course, officer. Happy to cooperate with the law. And it'll be very upsetting all the way down the line when they're arraigned before the judge. You're accused of disturbing the peace. Oh, I'm very sorry, Your Honor. I'm sure I didn't mean to do that. I hope you're having a nice day, Your Honor. I know I am. The system will be clogged up with these blissed out mental hygiene people who'll be very happy and very annoying as a result. I mean, they'll drive folks absolutely crazy.
I look forward to that future.
It'll be great. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, since you are beneficiaries of the mental hygiene czar and enabler, if things go crazy over the next month, you don't have to. You can see your house set up in flames, people running around, deaths on your doorstep. You can look and say, oh my, how interesting. We sure are living in exciting times, aren't we? And it'll drive everyone insane. You know, you realize I'm gonna blow your brains out. Yeah, I guess. And then I'll be dead. Well, don't just stand there. Say something. Hi. That's a nice jacket you've got on.
Okay.
You can see why these people would the mental hygiene legions will upset the powers that be on all sides.
Almost seems your characterization of them. It almost seems like I could turn this into a cult, and a lucrative one at that.
I would say, well, see, to continue to keep have you worry about them, they've got to send money. But but the thing is that this could just clog everything up. You know, this is a liberated zone. That's nice. I've always liked the park here. Yeah, well, it's free. Well, that's lovely. I never had to pay to enter it before. I guess I don't have to now.
All right, moving on.
Moving on from the armies of the armies of the mental hygienated.
Mental hygienated, yeah.
Yeah, militant mental hygiene. That's what it is.
Militant mental hygiene. Wow.
Militant mental hygiene. Only instead of this, it's will you be my posture pal?
Wow.
We can measure each other's posture and make sure that we sit up straight in our chairs in order to benefit our spines. Proper posture is the beginning of a good and productive day.
Wow.
The worst of it is the guy said that sitting up in the defendant's box as he's being tried for his life.
All right.
Do you deny that you did this? Did what, Your Honor? What you're charged with? Nobody's charged me anything. I got here for free. And you know the meals are free where I'm staying right now, and they're not charging me any rent. Of course they're not charging you rent, you moron. You're in jail. Oh, is that it? It's very nice.
Okay. Question from Connor. First,
Connor.
Some comments from him. He says, "I did it. I concede. I've loved and watched this show for close to 3 years and sent in questions which the devilish Don has refused to answer. Yeah, but always responded with, 'We could answer your questions for a small fee.' The final straw was when, having resigned myself to tend my guinea pig farm in the cold Midwest, my most recent purchase of chivalry, tied to a brick, was hurled through my front window with a prayer card attached with a note reading, 'We here at Tumbler House pray you become a patron soon, or we may stop being so chivalrous.' The message was clear, and so the crime empire gains a member in the land of Al Capone." All right.
The night Chicago died, I'll tell you what.
All right, so here are his questions. Dear Charles, why are prayers seemingly left unanswered? I prayed very recently to God, the saints, Our Lady, even doing a novena. My prayer was not answered, and I was devastated. I understand God is not a genie, but what reasons are there that God would not answer a prayer?
Well, it's funny. There was a particularly annoying answer to that very question years ago, which went, God answered your prayer. He said, no. which is kind of an annoying thing to say, but it's not entirely stupid in the sense that very often things we want or think we want are not ultimately what would be in our best interests. Because remember, what is our best interest? It's saving our soul. Now, whenever I've done anything in business or anything that might possibly benefit me financially, I've always prayed that it come through, but sometimes it doesn't. And I would not at all be surprised to find at the general judgment that had it come through, I would have been in a position to jeopardize my salvation. And not necessarily through the obvious ways. Maybe I would have met someone, maybe, who knows, got involved in something shady. Hard to tell. But the point I'm making is he knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows what's actually good for us. And if we pray very hard for something and we don't get it, usually that means A, that wasn't the best thing for us to have, and B, he usually has something much, much better in store, one way or the other, this side of the grave or the next. So when he does not appear to answer prayer, don't sweat it. Just keep praying. I mean, honestly, looking back over my 60 years of life, I can tell you that a lot of things I thought I wanted, if I'd gotten them, it would have been bad for me. And a lot of sins I might have committed, I didn't commit because I didn't get the opportunity, much as I might have wanted it.
And this connects to a lot of important things in the spiritual life, which is perhaps the Mary's response to the angel, "Let it be done to me according to thy holy will." And that, there are books written on that. Abandonment to divine providence is basically, that's saying that holiness is based on that one thing. Abandoning yourself to God's will, not your will.
Yeah.
And that's the road to a peaceful, serene life. You're not, because that helps you get off the hamster wheel.
Oh.
You're not chasing so hard because you're having trust in God and stuff like that. The prayers that he answers that I feel that are answered the most is when you pray for gifts of the Holy Spirit. I've said this before. I try to reorganize a certain prayer. For example, you used to pray, "God, give me a job," or find some sort of income or something like that. But then I try to reword it so that it's, "Give me the understanding to know what to do, and give me the courage, and the fortitude to do it." You see. So
Yeah.
it's asking for different. You see what I'm saying? Instead of it being delivered to you, you're asking for strength to do what you're supposed to do. And I think that's very different. I think it's important to not treat God like Santa Claus so blatantly.
Yeah, and of course the thing too. I mean. Yeah, at the end of the day, we have to remember that he's on our side. First and foremost, he's on our side. So if you don't get what you want, don't sweat it. Keep on praying and accept whatever doesn't come your way as God's will for you at this moment, just as you would if you got what you wanted. Trust me, when people pray and they get what they want, they never dispute, "Is this really God's will?" They never do.
You just reminded me of something, because I've done a lot of praying and haven't gotten what I wanted, And one thing that stemmed out of that is asking for the patients to bear the burden of not getting the temporal good that you're looking for. And so if you have patience, if God gives you the patience to overcome it, then that's fine then, right?
I would say.
Yeah. Okay. I am a young American teacher who has become disillusioned with modern public education, which I'm sure you can't relate to.
Oh, no.
Over the last couple of years, I've been trying to discern what I would want to do, and I feel increasingly drawn to the military. It fits much more with my views and beliefs than with those of education, but I am still hesitant to pursue it. My question is, how do you know what God is calling you to do? In addition, do you feel that the military is a good fit for a Catholic monarchist who also loves his country, specifically the USA?
Well, it's very hard, and a lot of the time, I won't pretend otherwise. A lot of the time, it's hard to discern what God's will is for us, especially along these lines. As far as the military being a good fit, right now, I would wait and see who is inaugurated. Honestly. And even if the Trumpster is reinaugurated, I don't know. I mean, this is a question I've asked myself. But see, when I took the oath back in 1978, it was a very different country and a very different world to what it is now.
Why would you say wait? I mean, what would be different?
What would be different, frankly, is the way. Well, I'll be blunt. If if Harris is our next president, I anticipate a great deal of civil unrest, and I presume that the president will attempt and civil unrest on the part of people with whom, to some degree, I may agree with. I may not agree with what they do in the course of civil unrest, but I may understand the reasons for doing it. So, for instance, if you have Oklahoma go up in flames because they're not going to take a gender bill, I could see a setup like that, and a president of this sort sending in the military to suppress it.
Like the Marines or the Army?
The Army, yeah.
Not National Guard?
Or federalizing the National Guard and using it. Of course, a state like Oklahoma, we might also see the National Guard refuse to be federalized. I mean, the possibilities for horror over the next 4 years are pretty horrendous. And I hope I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't something I'm happy about. But it just, I don't know. Even if the Trumpster were reinaugurated, I don't know that I could take that oath again today with what the Constitution has been made to mean. And even in my day, frankly, I had a lot of scruples because of abortion. I mean, when you say, I'll defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, am I saying I'll defend abortion, since the Supreme Court has said that it's part of it? And since the Supremes are the Ark of Delphi that interprets it.
Well, you've often said that a country is more than its government, and
I sure have.
More than anything else, isn't the military's? It's supposed to protect the people.
It's supposed to, but as I say, we are in extraordinary circumstances. I mean, again, it's like when Stauffenberg and the gang wanted to off Hitler. one of the indications that things were going south was way back in 1934, I guess, when Hitler had the armed forces take a personal oath to him instead of to Germany. And that was kind of a giveaway that there was a problem. So when 10 years later, Stauffenberg and the gang were plotting against him, they knew that to do so they had to violate their oaths. And their oaths meant a lot to them because they'd taken those oaths. So I guess what I'm saying is, for the reasons I've stated, it would be difficult for me in our correspondence place to make an easy decision. And it would be difficult for me. I certainly can't make one for him. Normally, typically, service in the armed forces is an apolitical way of serving the country. But that perhaps may no longer be the case. And the other problem, too, is that the way the military has been altered in my time. I mean, women in combat arms, and, you know, if you say anything against it, you're a bad one. I'm sorry, I can't. I would be very hard put to go into the armed forces today if I were in this young man's position.
Okay. All right, fair enough, Charles.
And by the way, as someone who was in the Guard and went to a military college and who was brought up to love not just the country but also its armed forces, this is not a fun thing for me to say.
Yeah. Right. Final comment from Connor. He says, "I wanted to say thank you thank you both for all you do. Watching you for years was instrumental in converting to Catholicism, becoming more knowledgeable on religion and monarchy. And I also picked Blessed Emperor Charles as my confirmation saint. I loved the Star Spangled Crown, and I'm enjoying reading about about the Blessed Emperor. God bless you both."
Thanks. You know, that when we hear that sort of thing, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you quite honestly, more than the money, it really, well, that's what we're in this game for at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Even the Tumbler House Tower with its glittering array of employees really only exists for the furtherance of the kingdom, for the conversion of souls to Christ. And, you know, as our immediate period appears to get darker, things like that become all the more precious to us, because there's so much misdirection and so much pain and horror out there. It's good to be able to bring a little bit of light.
Right. Question from Sandra. Dear Charles, I hope you had a Merry Christmas Day.
Yep.
My question is this. I have been talking to a Calvinist about Catholicism and have tried to use documented miracles as a way to back up the faith. His response is that the greatest miracle is the justification of a soul, and he needs no other miracles. How should I respond?
That your Calvinist friend has a very different view than Christ did, since Christ accomplished miracles for the purpose of confirming his doctrines. Now, it may be that your friend is smarter than Christ, you know, and that's fine if he feels that way. I hope it doesn't jeopardize his position with Christ. Obviously, he'll disregard those miracles because they disprove what he says and what he believes. And I understand that. If you could come up with something that I simply could not deny that made everything I've ever believed a sham, I would be faced with two possibilities. I could either say, well, maybe I better look at what you're saying, or I could, which would require humility, or in the immortal words of my nephew Albert, I could give you some variation of, I don't like it, so it's a lie, which is really what your friend is saying in not so many words. But both the work of our Lord and the work of Moses were punctuated with miracles for the sake of proving, confirming the truth of what was said. If your friend chooses to disregard those miracles, it's a free country. Unfortunately, it's not a free universe. And you have to ask him, would he have disregarded Christ's miracles? Since he doesn't need outward signs and he's so pure.
Okay.
I mean, no, that's fine. That's fine. If he's purer than our Lord, that's quite an accomplishment.
Okay. Final question for today is from Philip the Good of Burgundy.
All right.
Does Charles think the fantasy genre has been worn out?
Oh, gosh. Well, yes and no. By that I mean, how do I put it? Firstly, no genre in literature can ever be worn out for the simple reason that the human condition is never worn out. But certain tropes can be overdone at certain times. That's for sure. I mean, to give you an example, I've read all the Tarzan books by Edgar Rice Burroughs when I was a kid. I love them all. But you know, if there really were that many lost cities in Africa, you could not travel very far without bumping into one. There wouldn't be that lost. They're everywhere. So I think he kind of overdid it on the multinational group of people getting trapped in two ever-warring lost cities and getting rescued by Tarzan. I mean, it literally got to the point to where I could tick off the boxes on the plot for each book. Well, that's overdone. Maybe there are too many elves. Maybe there are too many vampires. Maybe there are too many this or that. But is fantasy outworn? No. And in fact, every now and then a writer comes along with a new take, a new twist. One of the reasons why, and I know some people get upset with me for saying this, but you know, what's her name? Oh gosh, the Harry Potter lady. I can't even think of her
name. J.K. Rowling?
That's the one. One of the reasons why her books were so popular was because they were a real new take on the genre. Now, she's no Tolkien, and her fantasy is far from heroic fantasy. But it plays with a lot of the old tropes in new and different ways, and that's why people liked it. You know, the trick, however, in any genre is that there'll always be tons of imitators of anything that succeeds, and the imitations are never as good. So, no, I don't think it's outdated. I think that someone is going to come along in a year or 5 or 10, and they'll come up with something quite new and fresh and interesting, and that'll be that for that.
Yeah. I'm very opinionated on this. I can see how there's so many imitators, as you say, that it's easy to see how, or it's easy to think that it's all the same, because it's just so easy to be, just to follow everyone else. But, you know, like art, every now and again you come across a work that expands your mind. That helps you see the world in a new way. One of the fantasy books I read, it was mediocre in general, but it had such an interesting take in one sense, where he really got into city life and got you the feeling of what it's like to contribute to a small interdependent city where people are interdependent on each other, to help build a wall that protects the city, to be a stakeholder in the city and care for other people in general, and the feeling of patriotism for these small, community, for a small village, to take care of all these people, and how everyone's interconnected. And it was it was a new feeling. The author of this particular book was in the army, so that makes sense, right? That sort of patriotic duty carries over.
Yeah.
And so that's something that perhaps you don't get. To use another example, Star Spangled Crown, you specifically wrote, now that's not obviously fantasy, but you tried to do something that I don't know of another author that had this similar goal, which is to create the feeling of what it's like to have to live under a king, and the personal relationship and the feelings that come with that. And you did that because Americans, that's an alien concept to America. We don't know what that feels like. And so I think a lot of things in the fantasy genre can offer these sorts of things, because what is fantasy? Fantasy ultimately taps into elements that our society don't have. It taps into what's missing.
Yeah. And often it sheds light on facets of reality that we're not able to look at because of the everyday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always said about The Lord of the Rings that above all, it's a meditation on the relationship between grace and free will.
Yeah.
And he's able to do it because it's a fantasy. He's able to do it much more clearly than he could do if it was mainstream fiction.
Yeah.
But and again, as far as Star Spangled Crown goes, of course, it was to the degree that the very idea of a monarchy is unthinkable in our country. To that degree, it was fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I pulled the events that created the monarchy out of the air.
Yeah.
But everything in my imaginary American monarchy, the things that people did, the way they went about things, were drawn from real life, just transposed to an American situation.
Yeah.
But everything, especially in the narrative of the author, when he's trying to describe what his life was like under the regime, that was very, very much drawn from real life examples of people in those situations. And of course, the other thing that I had some fun with was making my author not quite the great, wonderful fellow he thought he was. I did have a good time with that because, not that most people catch it, but at the very end, he's very, very proud, and he's strutting around because he's about to get the very lowest award after a lifetime of drudging. He's getting the very lowest award in the system.
Yeah.
And he's, as he said at the end, he had never been so proud, never been so honored. He never felt so honored and loyal to his king, nor so proud to be an American.
Well, wouldn't you be honored with an award regardless of its level?
Of course I would. Of course I would. And the fact is that in such regimes, people give their eye teeth to get any kind of recognition of that sort. And indeed, your loyalty to your monarch and your pride in your country are all bound up together. The closest feeling we have to it is the pride almost all of us once, and some of us still, took in the flag.
Mm.
You know, when you looked at the stars and stripes, your heart swelled. That's the symbol of America. That's my country. And whenever you saw the flag, especially if you were overseas, it just, and it was surrounded with the kind of ritual that a king is surrounded with. On military posts, when the flag is lowered every day, they have a special bugle call to the colors, which is very haunting. It's a lovely, lovely sound. But when they bring the flag down, they play to the colors, and it look it up and play it. It's a haunting tune, and that impresses itself in your mind. Well, you can play with that sort of thing in fantasy in a way that you can't in so-called mainstream. And to be honest with you, too, mainstream fiction today, you want to talk about a genre that's worn out. If that were possible, mainstream fiction is apparently just devolved into smut.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing, because I don't judge. But yeah, so at any rate, I guess we've pretty much come to the end of our Christmas show. If it isn't the post-Christmas show.
I don't know what these shows are anymore. I don't know. I'm done with 2020.
You just don't care as long as we're out of here.
This has been a veritable obstacle course of a year for me. I mean, I'm sure a lot of other people too, but this has been such a year. I'm thankful that we made it. Honestly, this has been such I mean, with not just COVID for me personally, there's been so many things. It's one after the other personally for our household. Ugh.
Well, you know, for me, 2020, in a sense, it was dramatic in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because, of course, I went home for Christmas, New Year's. Then I went to New York in January. I saw my aunt and gave talks to the Westchester County Chestertons. Shout out to you guys. It was wonderful, you know. Loved that time in New York. Then I came back here, and in February I went to England, gave a lecture, and saw a lot of friends there, and life seemed good. Then I came back here to Austria, and in early March the COVID monster shut us down. And I've been to Germany a couple of times when in the summer when as you know, it doesn't respond to weather.
Yeah.
Because that's what they say. So in the summer, it died down.
It actually spiked, relatively speaking. I mean, after
not in Austria.
It was very different but in the United States with all the protests and stuff.
Oh, that's right. Well, you know, when you get a lot of stupid morons doing stupid stuff, stupid things happen. Because, like, they're stupid. Or in the immortal words of Edward D. Wood Jr., in that immortal film, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Oh, you of Earth, stop it, stop it, stop it!
Okay.
And they certainly were the summer of the moron. Big, open-mouthed, empty-eyed, stupid morons. And they're woke masters in academia and private NGOs and all that. And then the old vampire George Soros.
You know, Yeah, I feel, and gauging from other trads too, in in the media and talking about this, I feel wound up like a spring, where once COVID, once we're past this, I think a lot of stuff is going to happen, and I think a lot of good stuff is going to happen because I think we're all waiting.
Well, I mean, people are just bloody sick and tired of it. And the bishops, oh my stars. Most of the bishops are in for a bad time.
How is that? Well, I mean, yeah. What do you
Money,
mean?
for starters,
Oh,
money.
well, aren't they already in for a bad time? Like now? I mean, I don't understand.
It's let's put it this way: the the same people who closed down the churches, who wouldn't do anything, who treated the laity shamefully, are also getting demanding and pushy and bossy. No communion on the tongue. Blah, 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 blah. You know what, Your Elegance?
Yeah, but I mean, they're hurting now, right? Like, it's not going to take the end of coronavirus for them to start hurting. I don't.
I think what'll happen is that there'll be a lot more vocal opposition to them.
Hmm.
I think that there'll be a lot of people. I mean, I know churches, for instance, in California, I won't say where they've already started having masses indoors again because the pastors are sick of it. And the pastors in question, because there's no, there's always a shortage of personnel, have basically said to their respective bishops who have a problem with that, okay, fine, fire me.
Yeah. I don't. That's quite public. People aren't doing indoor masses under the, you know, um, in the black market, so to speak. I don't know if Gomez announced it or what, but I,
Gomez hasn't really announced anything, and the ban on communion on the tongue, incidentally, um, the state of California has suggested it, but they didn't mandate it. So the bishops, what it is a bunch of the elderly non-binary church bureaucrats who always wanted to make everyone receive on the hand, getting their little elderly lady way. And the only answer to the dear old women of all genders that are dominant in the life of the church bureaucracy is get stuffed. I realize, little lady, you've been waiting for this since you were alive in 1968, but get stuffed. I'll let you know when I'll take communion on the tongue, or on the hand, but you'll be waiting a long time. And the latest thing from Rome, incidentally, backing them up, 2 words, just like when the CDF or the CDW banned the Tridentine Mass in 1974. Ultra vires, my little ladies. Ultra vires. And just as it took, let's see, 74, 84, 94, 04, it's 35 years. It took till Benedict XVI admitted that it was a lie. At some point, somebody will admit that this too is a lie. You really cannot trust church bureaucrats in these areas because they lie. They don't care. They're sweet little old ladies of all genders who have power. And it's too bad none of those genders are male.
why?
It'd be nice to have men ruling the church, I think. I mean, stop and think about it. None of the apostles were elderly non-binary people. It's really a shame that so many of their successors are.
Well, maybe they were. It's just as a society, it's
No,
you're so backwards back then.
no, 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 no. You like the Supreme Court finding gay marriage in the Constitution.
Yeah, that was inspired by a stupid sermon by a deacon who said that Jesus was looking, in gathering his apostles, he was looking for men and maybe women too. In quotes, that's how he said it. And maybe women too.
Yeah, you know another line that drives you crazy is when they get in the pulpit and say, what Jesus is trying to say is, oh, shut up.
I've never heard that one, but that's pretty bad.
Oh,
That's pretty
gosh.
bad.
Whenever I've heard that, I wanted to say, what he's trying to say is you should be beaten. Well, I mean, look, he's no more clued in than I am. So if his drivel is okay, so's mine. What I get out of the gospel text is that somebody who says stupid stuff should be beaten in public.
Well, in the light
That's
of the
what I get out
gospel,
of it.
in the light of the gospel,
In the light of the gospel, you're to be flayed alive.
that now I've heard that one. That is a bad one. Yeah, from
Well, they come up with these catchphrases, and they don't mean anything. You know, and if you use them back in other ways, they don't care for it. You know, they said, well, in the light of the gospel that requires that an apostle not be given any money.
Well, you're not a theologian, so you're not you aren't approved, right? You're just some rogue extremist.
Yeah, but so are you, Father. God doesn't like you.
What?
That's why you're stupid. If God liked you, he'd have given you a brain, and obviously he didn't. So he hates you. Well, I mean, the one that if they're going to throw garbage at you, why not toss it back?
That's true.
Because they make this stuff up. I mean, I can make stuff up too.
That's true.
I've they defy the law when they feel like it. I remember years and years ago, I was at a funeral, and this was 1999. Fellow died, friend of mine, and the priest used stemware, glass stemware, at the mass. And before the mass went on, the deceased's mother had said how she would have loved to have had a high mass, but she realized, given the circumstances, it was just before Holy Week that we were fortunate just to get what we were getting. But she didn't, just mentioned it, right? And he goes, here's an Irishman from Northern Ireland. He says, high masses are forbidden by Rome. And I looked at him and I said, Father, you know that's not true, but I'm not going to fight with you about it here. And so Mrs. Sullivan goes, I wouldn't fight with him, Father. He knows what he's talking about. So in the midst of the Mass, he's using stemware. And so afterwards, I said, Father, while we're talking about things that are forbidden by Rome, how about that stemware you used, which is explicitly forbidden? And I can show you where and how. And he said, I'll tell you what I told Bishop Ward, who was the auxiliary bishop in charge of that portion, apparently complained. If you don't like it, complain to the Cardinal. Cardinal Mahoney at the time. So I looked at him, and of course I remember this guy's from Northern Ireland. And so what can I say that'll drive him crazy? And it hit me. I said, Father, your orange cardinal doesn't, your Protestant cardinal doesn't faze me. Oh, I'm sorry, Father, I'd forgotten. You're an orangeman. I apologize. I didn't, I didn't mean to. You guys have your faith and you do what you like. I'm so sorry, Father. He was so mad he couldn't talk. It was wonderful. It was great. And then I turned my back on him and walked away.
Wow.
It was fun. Well, speaking of fun, I sense our time together is coming to a close, but this is the last podcast of the old year.
Yes, it is.
I wish I could say that I want to. There have been some years I would have loved to have held on to kicking and screaming. 1992 was like that. I liked 1992.
Mm.
2020, I give it a kick out the door, send it on its way.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how wild we get on this New Year's.
Yeah, how wild we get on New Year's, and we'll see.
My sister works at the grocery store, and at one of the grocery stores she's in North Carolina, and she says she's never seen so much booze and cigarettes purchased in her entire life for all of 2020. That's all. It's just been constant.
Booze and cigarettes. Well, people got to get through.
That's funny to me. Yeah.
Well, listen. Yeah, fast away the old year passes. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what occurs, whether the president attempts or tries to pull off some sort of legerdemain on January the 6th, some sort of constitutional surprise, whether it happens, and if it does, whether it succeeds or not, whether the COVID monster goes back to its cave this year or it doesn't, whether you're forcibly vaccinated by your masters or not, whatever happens, remember two important things that are constants. The one is that if it's Monday,
it's off the menu.
And although void were prohibited, the soul you save
may be your own.
Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year.